Hello and welcome, Radio Zindagi listeners. A very good afternoon to all of you, and I welcome you back on another episode of Illuminating Mind Matters with Basant. We bring this wonderful show every Wednesday, 12:30 to 1 p.m., where we talk about what's happening in the community, what needs to be discussed in the community, and who are the experts you can approach and go for help if you are in that situation. Illuminating Mind Matters with Basant is brought to you by Basant, which is Bay Area South Asian Network of Therapists. It's a nonprofit organization raising awareness and advocating for mental health issues that affect the South Asian community. They help the community members with educational resources and help them connect with culturally competent mental health professionals. If you would like to know more about Basant, their website is basantnow.org, or you can give them a call 510-770-6223. And with that, let me welcome our host of the show, Shalini Dayal, who is a marriage family therapist. Welcome, Shalini.
Thank you, Vedika. And hello, listeners. I am Shalini, and I am your host today with Illuminating Mind Matters. And I am very honored to have a very special guest today, Simi Marker, on this segment of our show. And our topic today is co-parenting through separation and divorce. And Simi is a local and very much in Fremont, based in Fremont and San Jose, a licensed marriage and family therapist. She's the founder and director of Mindset Counseling Group, with locations in Fremont and San Jose, as I mentioned. Sessions are also provided via telehealth these days. Simi and her staff specialize in providing counseling for families and couples. They focus on strengthening relationships and reducing symptoms related to stress, anxiety, and depression. Simi is passionate about her work and enjoys helping clients improve their emotional health. So welcome, Simi, and thank you for making time on your very busy schedule today.
Yes, thanks for having me.
We are honored to have you for sure. So tell me a little bit about defining co-parenting counseling. What is that, and how is it different from family and individual counseling?
So co-parenting counseling is here to provide support for families that are going through the divorce process. They might be starting the divorce process, or they may even be towards the end or through the divorce process and still need some help kind of managing the two different households, meaning mom's house and dad's house, and trying to coordinate care for the children. And sometimes the courts or the attorneys are recommending that the parents get some support because there's just too much conflict going on. So they should really come into a therapist's office and try to work through some of these issues. And sometimes the clients are self-referring. They're like, hey, we're having a lot of difficulty managing co-parenting between the two homes and coordination of care. And so they will seek out help. Which is actually kind of the best way for families to get support if they can recognize that they need support early, and come in and talk to a counselor and see how we can help them.
Thank you for explaining that. Can you share with our listeners, what is your experience working with high conflict divorce or very contentious co-parents?
So I actually have a lot of experience working with high conflict families because I am able to kind of manage some of these really stressful topics. A lot of times it's coordination of timing and scheduling and drop off and pickups and homework. And there's a lot that goes into caring for our children. And so there's a lot of conflict around two households that maybe want to do it a little differently. And so I really try to focus the parents on what they can be doing in their home to be stable and calm and have healthy routines, and to not try to dictate too much what's going on in the other parent's home, because that doesn't really go very well when they're trying to influence what's happening in the other home. So for high conflict parents, what I tend to do is to meet them separately and individually. Every once in a while, we'll try to do some joint sessions, but sometimes it's just too much conflict. And so what I do is I invite them to come and meet with me one-on-one, and we work through some of the concerns. And then I'm able to take that back to the other parents and say, hey, let's come up with a plan around some of these issues.
That is very good to know, because I've had clients who said because a variety of their past experiences with their former partners are not comfortable being in the same room. And
Right.
I know on Zoom it is very different, or rather online it is a very different experience, but sometimes just even that can be overwhelming for one or the other parents. So I'm glad that you were able to do it in individual sessions as well and still meet with them. Have you ever been to court to testify?
Yes. So oftentimes, the attorneys or the families want the therapist to come into court
Mm-hmm.
and to participate in the process of the divorce or custody hearings. And so I make it very clear from the beginning that our office we are not here to give any custody recommendations. So that is not our role. That is not something that we will do in court, even if we're asked. That is not something that is relevant to our work. Our work is more about trying to help parenting in the two homes. And so, yeah, and to answer your question, yes, I've been called to court a few times where they just want to hear what the experience has been working with the family and what kind of what the needs may be, identifying ongoing needs. But we're very careful to stay out of the custody recommendations.
I'm glad that you're explaining that your role is not to provide any kind of custody recommendations or evaluation. It is purely to support both the parents in the parenting process. And that is the reason you would go to court in such cases. So when your clients are asking you that, can you talk to my attorney? And so because the court ordered it or my attorney is recommending it, how do you handle that?
So I am open to speaking and coordinating with attorneys. I usually ask the client, what they would like me to share, because it's like sometimes it's the work we're doing can be confidential. So I want to make sure that I'm on the same page as the client when I'm talking to anybody outside of our office with their consent. So I'm like, I will ask them, I'm like, what would you like me to focus on when I do speak with the attorney? Again, I'm going to reinforce that I don't do custody recommendations. So I can talk about how the co-parenting work is going and any progress that we're making in our work, and also areas that still need support. So I do often speak with attorneys on that.
You bring up a really good topic also about confidentiality, because therapy is very big on confidentiality. How does that differ and change when there is court-ordered or court-mandated co-parenting counseling?
So oftentimes it can be court-ordered that the family needs to come into 10, 20, 30 sessions of co-parenting counseling, or they might say 6 months of a certain period of time of counseling, and it's ordered by the court. And that means they also are expecting a report that's going to come out of this office to say that we're going to need something in writing to say what the progress has been of the work, of the counseling that's been done in the office. So I will oftentimes be very much talking to the clients about, hey, you guys understand a letter is going to be coming back to the court. They're expecting something in writing from me about progress. And the letters are not going to be a surprise to the clients, because I'm usually talking about it in session to be like, these are the things that I'm going to be including, that we're working on, or that are ongoing challenges. So the court will know. And so the client will know, because I'm discussing it very often in during the sessions. Mm-hmm.
So it is different. Confidentiality is a little bit different when there's a mandate versus somebody coming in on their own.
It is different, yes, because the court is expecting information from us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for explaining that and differentiating that. From individual counseling where people come in on their own, it is very different when you come in for co-parenting. So confidentiality does shift a little bit. Vedika, before I move on, I was wondering, do you have any questions, any feedback for Simi?
So yeah, I do have a question. Simi, when you were talking about that you don't do the custody recommendations, but yet you participate in co-parenting. So isn't there a very fine line like between these? Because when you see the family, you can have a pick, right?
When I do see the family, I can identify that certain things are working in one household and certain things are maybe more of a challenge in another household. But usually the court has already set up a custody arrangement. Maybe it's 50-50 custody.
Mhm.
And so I am trying to support what the court has put into order. And
Mhm.
if things need to change, then I'm addressing that with each parent individually to say, hey, maybe the discipline in your home or the structure is not quite working for the child. So my role is to try to support the parent in the areas that I'm seeing that are not so strong.
Mhm.
Uh, and so it's not really trying to change any of the custody arrangement, but to try to work within what is already set up by the court. But also sometimes the other parent is fighting to change the custody arrangement. And if a particular parent is not showing improvements, let's say through the counseling, then that might show up
Mm.
as a result of the work that we're doing. And then, but that's for the attorneys and the courts to kind of bring forward. I don't say, hey, because what I've seen in the office in the co-parenting counseling, this is what I'm going to say about custody. Um,
Right.
I
Right.
really try to stay away from that.
Thanks for
'Cause
clarifying that. And I'm
yeah.
sure, our listeners also, like South Asian community, we don't know things in that much depth. So it is definitely highly advisable to contact a professional when you are going through such times. So listeners, you are listening to Illuminating Mind Matters. And today we have Simi with us, who is discussing more about co-parenting. And if you have any questions, if you would like to know more about anything discussed on the show, basantnow.org is where you can go and look for. That's the website for Basant. And if you have anything you would like us to discuss, anything going around you, anything from the community you want us to discuss on our show, info@basantnow.org, where you can write to us, info@basantnow.org, or you can give a call at 510-770-6223. And you listen to this wonderful show every Wednesday, 12:30 to 1 p.m. And I keep reminding our listeners because, I personally feel that all the topics we discuss on the show are so much which need to be discussed, which need to be addressed. So, listeners, don't forget to listen to Illuminating Mind Matters every Wednesday, 12:30 to 1 p.m. And with that, over to you, Shalini.
Thank you, Vedika, for pointing that out. I totally appreciate that. And you also bring up a very important question about the South Asian community. Some of the myths, misperceptions around custody, around co-parenting. So, Simi, what can you add about some of the common myths and misperceptions around uh, custody and divorce that you encounter in your practice from your clients?
So something that comes up commonly when I see divorcing South Asian families is very early in the divorcing process. A lot of the mothers are having the assumption that custody will default to them in a maybe 100% manner or 90-10 kind of split of time. And I really have to educate the community to let you guys know that California law most times is looking at 50-50 custody as their default. And so that means the father is getting consideration for 50% of the time. So it's not something that, because the mother has been the primary caregiver, let's say for the child's life, that the court is automatically going to say, hey, you get to keep the child for the majority of the time, and dad will simply have visitation. That is not how the California law breaks down custody. In a very average divorce situation, the starting point is 50-50 custody. So they are working off of that. And so I need parents to understand that if we're going to divorce and there's children involved, that the father will get 50% of the time and the mother will get 50% of the time in most cases. So I really need that to be something that is understood.
And thanks for clarifying that and bringing that up, because often the question comes up. The laws here in the US are very different from India and other South Asian countries as well. So for us to be mindful, do your research, talk to a lawyer, educate yourself before you make these assumptions, because they can be very disappointing. It can be very disappointing down the
It can be
road.
disappointing. It can be very shocking for some of my families. They're so surprised that the mother wouldn't get custody.
Yes.
Mhm.
And also, then it brings back to the topic of co-parenting. Knowing that California law often recommends 50-50 custody, and often it is somewhere close, barring other circumstances, that for the parents to cooperate and co-parent. So this is where your work becomes invaluable, and also the parents' participation is very, very valuable. I cannot emphasize that enough. What happens for you, Simi, when you have a parent, one party is refusing to compromise or cooperate? What do you do?
I Part of my work is to really explain to parents that conflict for the children is so damaging. I have many children that have told me that the stress, the arguments that the parents are having is causing so much tension that the children are reporting anxiety, depression. They're just feeling stressed a lot of the time. And even, some of the children that I work with, they say, even when things are calm, they're almost anticipating that there's going to be a problem. Like they're never really able to relax because they're always feeling like there's going to be conflict just around the corner. So I really work with high conflict with my parents to say, hey, we really need to manage how you're responding to some of these issues. And if there's a calmer way to do it, we do it through the therapist office where we're trying to kind of come up with solutions. I also have parents say, hey, if you're going to come to me with a problem, come with 2 solutions also. This is something that I want us to have progress and move forward, and not just keep like rehashing the same problems over and over, because that is really going to do damage to our children. That the stressful environment is such a distraction from the kids being able to kind of settle into a new routine. So I really work with parents as much as I need to kind of say, how can I help us reduce conflict and come to a calmer space? Because it's not about you anymore. It's really about the children and their well-being. And so sometimes we're going to have to compromise. You're going to have to let some things go. We're going to have to try to make this as calm for the children as possible.
You bring up a great point, especially about how conflict affects kids. Could you elaborate a little bit more? It's like, if I was to write a paper, I would underline this. How, and I want you to underline this, like how parental conflict, even if parents are living in 2 separate homes, how that conflict affects kids.
I think some of my parents are just maybe a little bit, this might be a blind spot for them, where they don't understand that they're venting on the phone to their attorney or to a friend or to a family member. And the child is picking up all these negative messages about the conflict, about the other parent. And it's really hurting the children. That the stress level and is causing such a distraction for our kids that the parents think that the kids are not affected, but the kids are getting quite stressed and anxious. And so I have to tell my parents to be mindful of what we say about the other parent is being picked up by our kids. So we really have to control the dialogue and what we're sharing, and try to find privacy. If you need to vent or need to have a tough conversation, wait till the child is not home or not around, because even if they're in their room with the door closed, you think that they can't hear. Our kids pick up on everything. They're listening all the time. And it's because, some of the children tell me they can't sleep. They're having not eating, the way they used to. They're not doing their schoolwork. They start acting out even. Some start having more tantrums and more defiant behaviors. So parents really need to manage their stress level and their venting and anger in front of the children, because it's having a negative impact.
Very much a negative impact. And I'm glad that you're explaining that and emphasizing to our listeners and to your parents that your children are forever listening. Even if they are very young, like infants, they are affected by our stress and tension. Raised voices, yelling and screaming, and frustrations with each other affect children of all ages. How do you handle or you address narcissism and parental alienation?
So this is a hard one, and it does show up in our office, where parents cannot take responsibility. They're like, I did nothing wrong. Everything is the other parent's fault, or, the other parent is the uncooperative party. And so part of my work is to really have people kind of see your contribution to conflict, and conflict cannot happen, one-sided. And so, it's trying to take personal responsibility for some of the things that are going on in the family, in the co-parenting. And I don't try to fight narcissism. I really try to have the client understand that I am on your side. Like, I am on the side, actually, I'm on the side of the child. I'm advocating most for the children. So I'm like, we're all trying to be on board for the common cause of the children. And if that's going to serve the children the best, the more alignment we can get for the parents, the better. So it's really trying to reiterate to the parents that the child's interests are what we're focused on, and not individual parent interests. That's part of the work
that is part of the work.
Yeah.
And also I hear a lot from the parents about parental alienation. And parents have come to me to ask me, it's like, how can they prove parental alienation? What are your thoughts?
I think first let's explain what that is.
Yes.
Parental alienation is, I'm trying to think of an example that I can share, where it's like a mother has the child in her care, and the child comes back from dad's house and is like, he doesn't feed you properly. He doesn't take care of you the way I take care of you. He doesn't give you attention. He doesn't, it's just constant negative commentary on the parenting or lack of parenting that is perceived by the mother. And it's just really damaging to the child to be like criticizing the dad or dad's house. And the child is really put in the middle. The child is not, I don't know what we expect from our children, how they're supposed to respond to that, because they care for both parents. And of course, dad is going to do things a little differently, in his home. And I think parental alienation is when we're over criticizing the other parent in a way to try to gain favor. Like, I want the child to be more attached to me as the mother. And in that way, I'm going to put down the father's parenting style or approach. And it's just really damaging. So I really work hard on that. In our office. Yeah.
I agree. And because it is very detrimental to the children, which creates a lot of confusion, anxiety, depression, and other behavioral and emotional problems. So what are your recommendations for parents? As a final question, what are your recommendations for parents who are going through this co-parenting process?
I really tried to explain we're in this for the long haul. And, we're in this for the long term, where our children, 18 and even beyond 18, parenting doesn't stop at 18. Like, we still are raising our kids, and we're also setting good examples for them. So if we're going to be critical and negative, it's going to stick with our children. So I really try to work with parents to be setting a good example and trying to find compromise and reduce conflict as we parent them.
So reducing conflict would be your main message. Where can our listeners contact you?
So we are Mindset Counseling Group. And so you guys can Google us. And we're in Fremont and San Jose. And we are doing a lot of sessions these days via telehealth. And we're starting to also do some in-person in the office appointments as well. So we're happy to talk with families that need support.
Okay. That is good to know. Thank you, Simi, for your time. This was very valuable, very informational and valuable for me and hopefully for the listeners as well. And with that, I turn it over to Vedika.
Thank you, Shalini, and thank you, Simi, for bursting so many myths on today's show. And I really feel that our community needs to listen to these important things. And if they want to make these situations less messy, then a professional is what they need. They do need a professional person by their side. So, listeners, if you would like to know more about, as Simi just mentioned, they are mindful Google groups. So you can just look for them on Google, or you can look at basantnow.org and you will get more information about them and what other members of community are doing. आप email कर सकते हैं info@basantnow.org. Over there, you can give us any topic, anything you would like to be discussed on our show on this platform. Once more, it's info@basantnow.org, or you can just give a call at 510-770-6223. With that, this is RJ Vedika signing off. That's all for today's show. We'll see you back on Wednesday, 12:30 to 1 p.m. Till then, Jai.